Uh, uh, uh. Uh, uh, uh. What's up, you fine folks of the internet? Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and it is a good day. It's a good day because we get to talk about Shadow of Intent. Now, this song, Intensified Genocide, it's been out for a little while, so I, as always, am a bit behind the times, but I'm excited to talk about it because we've talked about Shadow of Intent a couple times on the channel before. There's always a lot to learn, and there's always a lot to enjoy. Now, I'm kind of interested to see where this song goes, specifically because, you know, Shadow of Intent tends to bring some pretty solid deathcore to the table, but a lot of deathcore bands now are either going more of a blackened or more of a symphonic route or some combination of the two, so it'll be interesting to see which direction they go. Now, if you're brand new to the channel, I myself am a metal vocalist. I'm in 3 bands, Kardashev being my most active, but there's also Neverbreath and Viremia, and I'm a metal vocal coach, specifically focusing on these types of gritty, extended, heavily textured sounds that we all know and love. Pretty much my day-to-day is helping people sound like a toilet bowl in hell. So, hey, if you're interested in how those sounds are generated, you're in the right spot. Now, if you enjoy the content, you have fun, feel free to check out some of my other videos. Let me know in the comments below. It makes me feel good. And if you really enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button. We're really close to 100,000. I'm very excited about that. And last but not least, we do have a Patreon with a really cool community, access to a Discord, bonus footage on certain videos that we're rolling out is a lot of fun. And yeah, helps us make more videos a week. So check it out if you're so inclined. All right, but that's enough dilly-dally, shilly-shally. Let's get to it. Shadow of Intent, Intensified Genocide. Here we go. Okay, so it sounds like we've got a break there. I know I'm pausing it really fast, but one thing that's really fascinating is right now he's focusing less on technical exhibition, right? As far as like, oh, this is a high, this is a low, this is a tunnel, which we get a lot of in deathcore. Right now what I'm hearing is he's pretty much sticking to one spot and he's more focused on delivery. We're getting these crazy fast staccato lines. We're going to keep going. I'm going to save my more in-depth analysis. But I'm surprised. I'm surprised. Lately, deathcore has been like, how many different sounds can I fit into a split second? This is how driving can I be? Fascinating. Let's see where this goes. All right, this is a good spot to talk. There's no good spot to talk. There's no good spot to pause. So let's talk here. So one thing that's actually really, really fascinating, and one thing I'm going to start trying to do is speak about distortion a little bit more accurately. Oftentimes in the broader metal vocal world, we would put this into the false chord world, right? Now, the thing about that, and I've alluded and mentioned this before, how I think the false chord fry dichotomy is a bit of a false dichotomy, because oftentimes we're either doing combinations of things or we're actually using different distortion mechanisms to create these sounds. So, for example, and we can actually tell this from the very first sound that comes out of his mouth. This is a very arytenoidal and aryepiglottic sound. So we have above our vocal folds and above our false chords, we have 2 cartilages. Well, it's actually made up of smaller bits, but we have our arytenoid cartilages and the aryepiglottic folds, right? And those can actually fold in on themselves and kind of close the airway to create a more tightened sound of distortion. Oftentimes we teach false chord vocals first because it just helps us get used to the idea, or fry, really. But oftentimes false chord is usually the way I go. But we'll teach that because we want people to get used to the idea of distortion, right? But if we take this just like a pure false chord sound, yeah. That's not what he's doing, right? It sounds similar, but he is getting more of a yeah. He's getting more of that sound. Now, this isn't my personal grand discovery. People have been talking about aryepiglottic and arytenoidal distortion for quite a while. There are other YouTube videos about it that have been up for years, so I don't want to seem like I'm, exposing this like inner secret. People know about this, but sometimes, to keep it simple, we will call this false chord. And I think, I myself should stop doing that because it is different. Now, one thing that I'm really admiring about his sound is how much control he has, right? When we are creating these aryepiglottic and these arytenoidal distorted sounds, right? Oftentimes what happens is we find that we have better control of our air. The reason being is we're narrowing the opening. Because we're narrowing the opening, we have to make sure that we understand the concept of support, that we understand that this is muscle strength, right? You don't go to the gym and then beat yourself up because you can't, bench press 300 pounds, whatever. If it's day one. Likewise, this is an athletic activity. So going from here, which is very relaxed, yeah, hey, to this, that takes time. It took me time, right? I want to go back. We're at about 58 seconds, so we won't listen to everything over again. But I want to go back and I want you to listen to his first scream, because you can kind of hear how it starts with this, but lower. If I take that sound and I pull it back, that's what's underneath. Sometimes people hear that and they think that it's fry, but it's not. It is the aryepiglottic and arytenoid cartilages, aryepiglottic folds, and the arytenoid cartilages closing around and doing a lot of the rattling. Check it out. Okay, so we're at 58 seconds. I'll remember that. Let's check out just that first scream, and you can kind of hear him drop into it. Right? Kind of cool. Let's go to 50 seconds. And no, let's go back to 58 and we'll pick it back up here. Now let's go to 55. I do what I want. Oh. That was really impressive. So when we're doing our various types of, oh, my eyelashes, they're bugging me. When we're doing our various types of distortion, we have to understand that different vocal styles are going to be placed in different areas, right? So he goes to more of like a middle, like a sort of mid-high, right? That is a completely different mechanism. That's a very different type of scream happening underneath. And then he went from that high just then. I don't remember what he's saying, of course, because you can't understand a word they say. No, it's not music. He went from this high back down to that more arytenoidal, driving low. Very cool. He's also kind of playing with vowels, e, to create texture and distance between the sounds. And that's really cool. I'm a big fan so far that he is more a part of the music than like your typical deathcore vocalist who's kind of dominating the music. Now listen, I'm all about technical expose. I think it's really, really cool. But I think at the end of the day, I appreciate vocals that work with the song versus a song that has vocals as like 90%. It's like a little bit of ketchup on your French fry versus your French fry as an excuse to eat a whole bottle of ketchup, right? It's kind of like that. I really like the balance that I'm hearing here. I do want to go back so you can hear him in that high, right? This high. And by the way, one really good way, if you're a little bit more adept in your vocal technique, I don't want you to start here, but if you're a little bit more adept in your vocal technique, one thing you can do to find out where your screams are sitting is to slowly switch it with your clean voice. This is a little bit of an acrobatic move. So if you're brand new, I can't control what you do. I don't necessarily want you to try it. It's up to you, right? But if I gradually switch, it'll tell me where my vocals are placed. So for example, if I do one of these like really nice hollow lows, right, I'm right there. Right there like that. My scream is placed here, right? Now if I do a high, my scream is placed here, yeah. So understanding how to move resonance and change our timbre is really, really important. I want you to hear that, and then we're gonna keep going. This is a spicy song, I'll tell you what. Let's go to 1 minute, because it's a nice, 1 minute's too far. 1:10. Yeah. Yeah. You hear how he didn't stop? He slid. Oh, that's tasty. It's those subtle nuances that I just love so much. So he didn't go, right? There wasn't that pause. Ooh, see, even I clicked a little bit right there. That was a little bit smoother. Good job. That is solid control. Yeah. Jeez, Ben, take a breath. I got to talk about vocals. Holy cow. Speaking of breath, there is some seriously good breath support going on. So if you are a musician, or if you have recorded your own vocals, or if you're a producer, if you record bands, one thing that you know sometimes, especially in deathcore because these sounds are heavily textured, one thing that you'll know is you'll get these long runs where it's just like the vocalist doesn't sound like they're breathing. But then if you listen closely, what you can hear is you can hear multiple takes that are cross-faded over one another. Now listen, I'm not like calling anybody out. That's a fine technique. I've done it before in Kardashev in certain sections just because I thought it sounded cool. So I'm not like saying, the inner state of deathcore is a lie. I'm not saying anything like that at all. But what I am saying is that when you hear a vocalist who is not relying on that so heavily, it's pretty important. I may not have an ear for it, but I'm not hearing a lot of that here. Maybe once or twice. So this sounds like it's really solid, straightforward breath control. It sounds like he's really holding all these phrases out. And there are a couple things that we can do to understand how to do this. Number one, Trevor Strnad is also a really good example, Black Dahlia Murder, of a vocalist who just goes and goes. Number one, I've talked a lot about on the channel holding your ribs out, utilizing your entire core. One thing I haven't really talked about so much is this activation of the pelvic floor, right? And in one of my lessons today, I was actually talking about it, so it's kind of at the forefront of my mind. But when I do my vocals, and when a lot of people do their vocals, they're sort of sunken a little bit, right? So I don't know how much you can tell, but this is me standing straight. Hello, everybody. Hi, my name is Mark, you goobers, right? Now, like if I was to do vocals, I kind of stand in like sort of a martial arts stance, and I sink a little bit, right? I'm a little bit sunk, and then when I'm screaming, I'm squeezing my abdominal muscles. I'm activating my core in such a way, and again, this is not my discovery. People have been talking about this for years, right? Forever, maybe even hundreds of years, because classical singing is like way older than deathcore. I know, surprise. But this downward pressure on our pelvic floor is an indicator that we're creating pressure upward on our diaphragm, right? And you can kind of hear it. So if I'm like, hey, right? That's a very comfortable thing. I'm sitting down, hey. One thing, if you want to get an idea on how to do this, and this is super common, just kind of bounce up and down. So you take your vocal, right? That'll give you the feeling of what a projected vocal sounds like. You'll notice that you're feeling activation in your gut, right? You're feeling the sound move up and forward, but your neck's not squeezing, right? Interesting. So that's just a little preview into how to know what proper support feels like, right? Now, I have more I want to talk about, but I want to listen to the song more. So let's just keep going. Let's keep going. Man, there's so much. All right, here we go. So it almost sounds like there's a really high like choir in the back. I didn't hear that the first time through. Maybe it wasn't there the first time through. But yeah, I almost hear like this choir, and it's actually really cool. I dig that. I dig that quite a bit. So another thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the different ways that we can generate low vocals, right? Oftentimes, when I talk with people about getting lower, or you know, for that matter, getting higher in their vocals, right? All they're thinking about is this, right? And then sometimes they're thinking about their mouth. And then other times they go even further and they're thinking about their tongue, right? These are all things that we can sort of stack on each other. These buffs stack, right? These are all things that we can stack on top of each other to create a deeper low, right? So there's an inherent level of lowness in this distortion that we have here, right? This. And the reason for that is it's a low frequency. These things are comparatively rattling a little bit lower, right? Now, since we're working with a sound that's almost entirely texture, okay, what we can do is we can utilize space. We can utilize open space. And I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to go a little bit farther today. So we can utilize open space, right? So some easiest thing you can do, and you actually see him do this in the video, which videos are usually lip syncing, so it's cool that we're seeing it here, is you can see him sort of like puckering and pointing his lips out. And if I take my normal voice, you can hear how that increases resonance, right? It's just a little thing. Our vocal tract is basically kind of like a curved candy cane shaped tube, and we're lengthening that tube. Think about if you had like a little toilet paper roll, right? And you said, Now you've got one of those really long cardboard Christmas tubes, you know, Christmas wrapping paper, whatever, tubes. It's going to be much more resonant. Okay, so that's one. Another thing we can do is we can manipulate the tongue. We can utilize the tongue to create different shapes. And there's not like one set shape to use. Any shape, that's a freedom of metal vocals. Any shape that works and isn't painful is good, right? The most common one is here. But, you know, down here, curved to the side, right? There are different things that we can do. Now, we also have a little structure here. This is another strength-based thing, okay? You have a bone called the hyoid bone here, and it connects via cartilage to the top of your, the name escapes me. The name of the cartilage escapes me, but it connects to your larynx and the base of your tongue, which is part of the reason why we need to stretch our tongue and relax our neck, because if your tongue goes this way and your larynx goes this way, you could be pulling and causing some strain. But you can sort of extend, you can sort of bullfrog. I think I've talked about this before. You can sort of bullfrog that hyoid bone a little bit to achieve a little bit more of a low. Now, a little bit goes a long way. You don't have to like go crazy, but you can kind of see it here. So if I take two fingers and I put them on my hyoid bone, you can kind of see me move the fingers outward. This isn't to be confused with pulling your larynx down. A lot of times I see, you know, people on the internet, and I think the internet is overall a pretty good source of information for metal vocals. So I'm really not trying to insinuate like, oh, you read it on the internet, it's inherently a lie. No, there's a lot of great stuff out there. But sometimes I think people will be maybe slightly confused because they'll say, yeah, so to get this low, I plunge my larynx down as far as I can go. But then I look at their larynx and it's not actually moving. Or I should say it's not driving the movement. What's happening is their hyoid bone is extending, or this muscle is sort of pushing out. That's creating more resonant space, and their larynx goes down a little bit. But because I don't, maybe this is true, but not a lot of people know about the hyoid bone. I think it's the only floating bone in the body, so they just kind of think it's the larynx. But if I drop my larynx down, my voice would do this. I can't control anything in there. Some people can, right? I'm not saying that this is the only way, but for the vast majority of people, shoving your larynx down into your throat is going to just make things harder. However, if I extend the hyoid bone, this you see it in here, folks. Goofy noises. It's different, right? I have more control there. And then finally, one thing that he does, and this is a really common thing, you see this in deathcore, and I like it, is an increased airflow, right? So a little hyoid bone, increased airflow. Sounds pretty neat. I just talked a lot, so let's keep going. What an outro. Holy crap. Ugh. So I'm a sucker for good outros. I love good outros. So one thing that was really cool there is that, he was playing around with his low and letting it slip into a mid. A lot of the way that he was doing this was just by opening and closing his mouth, right? Oftentimes, we think that our mid scream has to be a totally different scream. And it can be. It's not bad if it is. But honestly, the route that I take and a route that a lot of other people take is they just take their low and they remove the things that they're doing to make it low, and it kind of sounds like a mid, right? So he was going back and forth between the mid and the low, and I don't know the lyrics, so I'm not going to try to repeat what he was doing. But if I have like my that's more of a low, right? If I open up, right, I have kind of a mid tone, right? We can do the same thing with our high. If I do everything that makes my high a high vocal, it sounds like a high. Wow, that was a genius statement, Mark. What if I take away the brightness of timbre, the forward resonance, and I let it just sort of sit in the front of my mouth right here, right? Right, I can go to this hold it right here, and then I've got some sort of articulatory source. Right, and it kind of becomes a bit more of a mid-scream, right? It becomes a little bit more of a mid-scream. So that's kind of something you can do and you can think about. If you're feeling overwhelmed trying to learn a brand new vocal technique, sometimes you can just take what you're already doing, change the way that you deliver it, and boom, you've solved the problem right there. So I want to listen to that outro again, because that was dope. I don't know how long it was. Let's see. Let's just go from here, because it's totally worth it. It's less than a minute. Yeah. that was delicious. I love the whole song, but that outro is absolute fire. Okay, well, that was a beefy song. I think, you know, with what I know of Shadow of Intent, I was kind of expecting a little bit more vocal acrobatics, right? Now, let me rephrase that. I didn't say that right. I was expecting more vocal exposition, right? But I'm glad I didn't get it. I'm glad he drove the song in the way that was appropriate. Nice driving low vocals, letting the drums, letting the guitars really sort of lead the song at times. He sounds phenomenal. Like, I think when it comes to just the low tone itself, like the generation of the low tone, Ben is one of my favorites because it is just so clean and controlled and rounded. You know, and he interacts with it as if it's like a physical thing, right? Like he'll like, sometimes it sounds like he's almost like biting into the note. Like he has this sort of like, and it sounds really cool when he does it. Yeah, just mastery on that tone and on the entire range. It was interesting we didn't get as many highs as I suspected, but when he used them, they really accented and brought the section out well. So overall, I give the song a 10 out of 10 for being awesome. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me while we checked out Intensified Genocide by Shadow of Intent. Again, if you had fun, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. We are so close to 100,000. Me and Alex, my business partner, will be very happy to see when that happens. Also, feel free to check out our Patreon if you want to see more videos per week, and if you want to hop in the Discord. A huge shout out to our mods, by the way. Our mods are awesome. They're killing it, and everybody's working real hard to foster a good community there. So it's really cool to see. But beyond that, if you want lessons, check the email in the description below. Happy to help. Finally, as always, many thanks, much love. I'm going to listen to the song 10 or 12 more times. Bye.